So here is why I think that you should vote for Patrick Little in 2020 instead of Trump or Hillary Clinton or Libertarian or Independent. And that's because that's very one simple fact. And I do have multiple points, but it's the fact that Trump is a neocon. It's the fact that Trump is and has been in support of the same policies that the Republican Party have been supporting for many years. And I want to make it very clear that I understand that our support of Trump in 2016 was necessary. Trump represented many policies that, to anybody on the third position, would appear to be very different from the standard Republican baseline. But you have to understand that Trump is still supporting Israel. Absolutely, absolutely no criticism of Israel. He's supporting Israeli genocidal policies in the Middle East. He's antagonizing the Middle Eastern republics and nations that should not be antagonized. And I'm obviously talking about Iran and Assad's regime in Syria. And the fact that he is supporting Israel so much. And I understand many people in the third position are of the opinion that we shouldn't be too antagonistic of Israel merely because it is a nation state. It is a homeland for the Jewish people. And as much as we can agree for nationalism for everybody, we cannot agree that nationalism that negatively affects us in the form of globalism is a good idea. And I'm speaking particularly to Americans, and it's also going to be very useful for a European audience because there are many alt-right, quote unquote candidates. I think a good example would be the Alternative for Deutschland in Germany, which, albeit a nationalist anti-migrant party, I don't see them bringing about fascism anytime soon. I don't see them deporting every single person that is not German in Germany. And that's what Germany needs. And Germany's not going to get any better until they do so. And that's also important because capitalism, which I think many on the third position will agree, is very much an opponent to the nation state. When you have markets that are allowed to compete separately with ours, these independent markets are not always going to be two-sided. They're not going to be two-way streets. It's going to be many times competitive for them, and for us it's a loss. We know this based on our deficit, the failure of trade agreements, including NAFTA, the amount of exports and imports in comparison to the GDP and our population in comparison to earlier the United States. And Trump is not against any of that. He is an icon of business. He's an icon of the free market. And as useful as it is to side with conservatism nowadays, which is what we did in 2016, we have to agree that the mainstream conservatism of our day and age is usually the path that brings people towards the third position. For me, it was libertarianism when I was a lot younger than I am now. I personally supported libertarianism. I was a very, very avid supporter of Gary Johnson and Hop, and anybody who believed that you have the right to speak and act and do whatever you please, as long as it's within your own, right to not hurt other people. And that's why I think that the libertarian system is so appealing. Because if I don't want to live with other races, if I don't want to interact with somebody of other ethnicities, I don't have to, and that's the beauty of libertarianism. However, on the flip side, I think we all understand, we on the third position, that is, that libertarianism has so many pitfalls, and it takes so many moral shortcuts that it's not plausible to create the kind of society that we are. Not even to mention the fact that a libertarian state would have absolutely no legal authority to deport people who would not be compatible with that society. And even to civic nationalist fascists, although I'm not going to go in depth on this video about why I believe that civic nationalism simply wouldn't work in the United States, even if it may be a necessity in the next 100 years. Why it would still lead to the destruction of our civilization. But um, and now that I've briefly laid out for you why I think that Trump is an icon of the decadence of conservatism, why I believe that Patrick Little should be voted for and not Trump. And that's because Patrick Little is unabashed in his support of fascism or National Socialism. All you have to do is listen to the things he says, read the things that he writes. It's really not difficult to believe that Patrick Little is 100% in support of National Socialism, because he is. And anybody who wants to say that Patrick Little is somehow shirking away from the movement, I don't know how much of a purity spiraler you'd have to be to think such a thing, but it's fairly obvious to me that Patrick Little is doing nothing but fighting for his people and fighting for fascism. When he does his jaywalks, when he's touring around the United States right now at this moment, and he is doing real work, positive work to make a difference. He is only one voice, and I am only one voice, and we are all only one voice. And the idea is that if we have enough people talking about these issues, expressing the fact that we believe in these solutions to these problems, that maybe something might be done. And the siege culture is, on the other hand, interesting, because the violent opportunity to save our American Republic, I believe, is a very positive idea, just as much as civic change is a positive idea. If we could work through the democratic system, I think that's great. And if we can achieve a violent revolution, I think that's great. But I think we can all agree that the least amount of deaths, the least amount of that our people would have to, suffering that our people would have to endure in order to, move the goalpost forward. That's really all we need. And right now, my personal opinion is that we should try democratic change, because things aren't that bad yet, and they are getting very, very, very bad. And of course, they could be a lot better. But Patrick Little is offering an opportunity for us as fascists to vote for somebody who believes in what we believe in, with our votes, which is really all we can do, of course, other than talk about it on the internet and try to convince people. He is doing everything that we should be doing. We should be organizing. We should be going on the streets. We should be making our presence heard and felt through somewhere other than the internet, as much as I think that's a very good thing. The fascism of the internet is going to be a lot different from if we were to actually create a movement in real life, because there is no fascist movement right now in real life. I would say there is one on the internet, but the reason why there is no one in real life has a lot to do with the discrimination and persecution of fascists in this country, and the very, very erroneous use of the word racist, which is applied to many of us, even civic nationalists who call themselves fascists. They may be. I think even they have to suffer this kind of discrimination, and it's an awful, awful thing. But Patrick Little doesn't care. He does not give a shit, and that's a beautiful thing, because we've only had a very few amount of men in American history who have actually risked everything for fascism, and that is what's important. Men like Rockwell, Pierce, these are the icons of not being afraid to say what you want to say, and to speak for our movement as true as you can. And that's all that they're doing. That's all that they're doing. That's what Patrick Little's doing. And I'm not going to say that Patrick Little is the next Rockwell. I haven't known him enough to say he is the next Rockwell. But he was one of the only men who's actually showing his true colors, as far as what he's willing to do for the movement, what he is going to do. And his ideas are sound. He speaks only what we desire, the corporatist third positionist system, fascism, National Socialism, the ethno-state. And how we go about that, I have no idea. He doesn't have any idea. But we have to get people on our side. And by taking away votes from Trump, which is Patrick Little's idea, by running for this candidacy, which he will not get in 2020. And I don't think Rockwell thought he was going to get it in 1972. But the entire point is to draw votes away from the conservatives, because the conservatives and most of the Democrats are all people who just want power and money. And that's the sad thing about our sociopathic capitalist system, is that we allow money to decide who's right and who's wrong and what needs to be done. And that's an awful, awful thing. So why should we risk losing votes to a Bernie Sanders or whoever the next Democratic candidate is in 2020? Because there's no other way. If we had the Republicans win the next president election and the next one after that and the next one after that, what is that going to accomplish? Many of the worst things in our American history have happened under Republican leadership, under Democratic leadership, and I think we all know, we fascists, we know what has to be done, and we can't vote for these people. And I will make a point that I understand the position of people like Culture Thug on YouTube. He's a great channel, by the way. I'm a great fan. I've spoken to him, who believe that race-based politics won't work. And I'm not going to talk about that right now, but I think even then you should vote for Patrick Little. You need to make some kind of difference, and your vote is what counts to these people. If you take away their votes, you take away their power, they might start to see your way of things. And we have to continue to be very, very we need to accelerate the argument. We need to continue to talk to people on the internet. We need to continue to write articles, continue to make videos, and things are moving in our way. I think we all see that the movement is pushing forward. All right, and there, I want to make this very clear. Patrick Little is not perfect, but he's the best we got right now. You need to vote for him in 2020. And if you choose not to, I'll understand why you might vote for Trump. But I will still call you a conservative. If you're a fascist and you don't vote for a fascist, what's the point of you doing anything with your vote? What are you doing? You're wasting your time. We both know you're wasting your time. Trump isn't going to kick out the Jews. Trump isn't going to solve the Jewish question in any fashion. Trump isn't going to stop the decline of the whites in the United States. Trump isn't going to end the free market. Trump isn't going to stop these predatory trade practices. It doesn't matter if he completely tariffs and starts a trade war with every nation in the world. It's not going to solve the issue, because the issue with democracy is that even if Trump gets his second term, the next president just has to reverse what he's done. And that's why the struggle of fascism will not end until we have fascism. And that's what you need to take away from this. You can't vote for anybody but a fascist. And if there is a candidate from any other fascist movement that I think is truly in our movement, I will vote for him. And Patrick Little's the only one right now.